And hello to you, wherever you happen to be. I'm Dave Adams, and this is Street Level America, USA Heartbeat, Operation Eagles Wings, and several other platforms we're going to be posting this interview on. We've done Operation Eagles Wings for about 10 years now, honoring those who honorably serve. And one of the things that we want to do is we want to talk to veterans because they have an amazing story to tell. We have a free nation today because of what they've done. And we have the distinct honor to have with us tonight on Zoom call. And I'll give you a heads up on this. Had a bit of a cold earlier today. And so I'll try not to cough in your ear, try to use some cough drops. And just rest assured that James Roberson and I are not in the same room. And so he's not going to catch my cold. So James Roberson has written a book about his experience in Thailand in 1967 to 1968. Is the book here, Buck Sergeant Roberson. The green screen isn't allowing me to show it too well. It's a white book. But you can just go to it's on Amazon, right? James?
That's correct.
Okay. It's Buck Sergeant Roberson, Thailand 1967 to 1968. And let's see if we can get a picture of it here in the camera without the green screen trying to edit it out. Here we go. There we go. Sticking the microphone out of the way. Okay, this is what the book looks like, folks. That's what the book looks like. So much for the Zoom green screen, but that's what the books look like when you can see it as it's going in and out of focus. Sorry about that. James, how long were you in Thailand?
I was there almost exactly a year.
Okay. Now, one thing that is just really amazing to me about this book is it's like you wrote a diary every day about what happened when you were over there. Did you ever serve in Vietnam or simply in Thailand?
I was stationed in Thailand. I flew over Vietnam going in and flew over Vietnam coming out. So I got 2 months of combat pay.
Why did you write this book?
Well, the number one reason is I realized that there's probably several million guys that were in the same position that I was in. Uh, we were in a support area, and we really weren't given quite the due that we would deserved. We was we were not considered in a combat zone, but if you read the book, there's an entire chapter that documents all of the insurgency and stuff that went on in every single province in Thailand while I was over there. Now, my tour, the Tet Offensive, occurred exactly in the middle of my tour. I was there from May to May. The Tet Offensive at the end of January was the beginning of the Tet Offensive. So I was there before the Tet Offensive, during the start of it, and left before it was all over. But a lot of even some veterans don't give Vietnam veterans who were not stationed on the ground in Thailand actually credit. Some people actually believe that we should not be allowed to be called Vietnam veterans. But we were pretty well documented. We were in a lot of very serious situations. But the main thing was we supported guys that were in a very obvious and even fatal situations.
Were you
We
in,
was
were you involved in the Tet Offensive?
do what?
Were you involved in the Tet Offensive? Were you in a support
Yeah,
role?
I was actually given almost a year's worth of credit for counterinsurgency. Now, I was not directly involved in combat myself, but stuff that was going on all around us. A lot of people don't realize when the Tet Offensive started, it was all over Southeast Asia. It was in Thailand, Laos. I was stationed 30 miles from Laos, and it was in Burma. It was in Cambodia. It it was a much bigger operation than most people realize. Most of the stuff that occurred in Thailand and Laos was classified primarily due to politics because they were trying to show that it was a limited war. It was contained in South Vietnam. But I was fortunate, I guess, that I was part of the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing.
Mm-hmm.
The wing commander, who was Colonel Robin Oles, and who became pretty famous in his own right, was and my vice wing commander was Chappie James. A lot of people that's followed much about the air wars and World War II and Vietnam know about both of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
And
Define for us what a counterinsurgency is. If people are listening and they don't know what that is.
well, insurgency is basically, some people would probably call it terrorism, but it's more guerrilla warfare where people are trying to infiltrate, create harm, disrupt uh, our regular military and the government operations in Thailand. And these people were designated as insurgents.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you were involved in opposing that insurgency, then you were given credit for counterinsurgency experience, and it it was kind of an exciting time. It was a very busy time,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of the guys we worked 12-hour shifts 6 days a week, and most people did not that we didn't have time to really dwell on too much of what was around us, even close to us. Uh, we were just too busy doing our jobs, and when we weren't doing our jobs, we was too dang tired to think much about it. And so a lot of stuff became much more clear. You know, hindsight's 2020. And but I was very fortunate that the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing in the Air Force uh, during the Vietnam War, uh, during Colonel Oles and Chappie James's um, tenure, was really uh, uh, an elite time for. It was probably in some ways maybe even a glorious time for some of the pilots. Now, I wrote an entire chapter where I documented the losses and the wins of our air combat crews. And if you read it, you'll notice there's a lot of losses.
One of
There,
the things
there,
that really, one of the things, excuse me for interrupting, one of the things I really love about your book is so often there's so many people that are lost in war that we never know the names of. We never know what happened to them. But you've gone to great detail in this book in listening and listing airplane numbers, mission numbers, dates, names. This person left, this person didn't come back. I was really impressed with the cataloging that keeping a diary of these men that went and lost their lives in service to our country. And the names are in this book. And I really want to thank you for doing that.
well, I feel like that anybody that lost their life or was became a prisoner of war uh, or almost lost their life, they they deserved mention by name. Their families need to know. In some of the cases, I'd say a large majority of the guys that survived, know, a lot of them are now dead after the war.
Mm-hmm.
And but especially for those who did not come back, I wanted their families to have a starting point if they were interested. And one of the things, by listing the serial numbers of the aircraft, you can research a lot of history about an aircraft, its battles, who flew it. I not only gave the guys names, I gave their ranks, I gave their status, whether they were missing in action, whether they were um, killed in action. And of course, I listed the ones that were successful, that shot down enemy Russian made MiGs. And uh, of course, they got medals. And it, but I felt like anybody that endured what they endured. And one of the things a lot of people are not aware of, now the Navy had a lot of young pilots, but we had guys, I debriefed some guys after they returned from a mission. Some of these guys were grandfathers. Some of them were older guys.
At the
And
time they were flying.
yeah, they was some of them were bald headed, some of them were white headed, and it, a lot of people didn't realize that. I don't think they seem to, of course, if you see some of the movies and things like that, it's always younger guys, and
Let's
I've
talk
really,
let's talk about the movies for a little bit. A Good Morning Vietnam and some of the other war movies that the younger generation have seen. Were those accurate in their depiction of what it was like during Vietnam?
I think the movie Good Morning Vietnam was actually pretty realistic. In some of the
Mhm.
stuff, it seemed, kind of ridiculous. That was that was really the case. There was a lot of stuff that wasn't fair, the way guys were treated. Now, one thing I do want to make it clear,
Sure.
when I was in Thailand, when I was with the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing, I've got written documents and stuff. My sergeants and my ranking sergeants and my commanding officers, they showed me something that nobody else has ever equaled, and that was appreciation. I never in my entire life ever, and I'm 79 now, and I've never felt as appreciated as I was then. Uh, the one thing, the combat air crews, they for sure showed us appreciation. They realized that a lot of times that their skills uh, might not have been the only thing that helped them come back alive. It became more and more important during the year that I was over there. Electronic warfare saved a lot of guys' lives, and some of the guys appreciated what we were doing for them to help them. And I had many examples of where officers, flight officers, would actually help bring in guys from downtown or something that were inebriated. some of the enlisted men might have drank a little bit too much, and sometimes they would bring one in, and uh, and they would say, "Well, we've got you one, Sarge. We're turning him over to you." but that was probably, out of everything, was just the sense of being appreciated, and they documented it. I've got uh, written documentation of how they thought about me and how they felt about me,
Mhm.
and uh, that you can't beat that. It's really amazing, how people uh, how that kind of thing, as the years wear on, becomes more and more important.
Mhm.
Now, I realize I'm coming down to the end, and that was one of the reasons I wanted to document this in a book. And one of the things that I did besides because I wanted to get these guys that weren't given their due for their service in Thailand. I wanted it stated what they might have gone through and what I documented just for the year that I was over there. And I did it the entire chapter, and I did the same thing that I did with the pilots and their planes.
Hmm.
I gave dates and, or in some cases, date ranges of when all of this stuff that was really serious activity was taking place. And I just thought uh, that, but one thing too, I want to back up and say that I appreciate all veterans, no matter where they served, no matter what branch of service, no matter what level of danger they served in, if they did their jobs and they did it well, then you're appreciated. And now it was not that way when I came home. I was actually one of those that you heard stories about people trying to spit on them at San Francisco airport and stuff. That
That
actually happened.
to
And
you, to you.
I feel like that uh, now quite a few people, if I wear my hat, people will come, will thank me for my service. And of course, I always say, well, I thank you for noticing, you know, uh, and it's taken a little bit a while to get used to the positive appreciation because
Now,
when I came back, it was not appreciated.
let's talk about that for a little bit. So when you came back initially, you were baby killers and people spat on you. And we've learned to appreciate those like you that have served in the military. When did that change, and what do you think changed that from the for America finally realized, hey, these were servicemen that served their country. When you came back, you had a real negative reaction, but that changed. When did it change, and what do you think changed that to more
I
positive
think
reaction?
I think it changed very gradually. Uh, what what happened is a lot of the negative, uh, the anti-veteran sentiment gradually faded away, and as it faded away, we started seeing a little bit more appreciation for our service, and so it's been a very slow. To me, it was very slow. Um, uh, Kind of an event, how it just gradually it was like a seesaw. The negative attitude went down and the appreciation level went up.
Mm-hmm.
But over a period of several years. So it's been what 60 years
Been a while.
since it's been a uh, at least for me, that's but it I have been extremely proud and glad that I did what I did. Now, I was kind of like Colonel Oles. I had some different thoughts about the war as time went by, but still, I wouldn't take $1 million for my service in the Air Force. I wouldn't take $2 million for my year in Thailand serving with the 8th Tactical Fighter Wing. I would not. Uh, I would not call that an over exaggeration. That's really the way I feel about it. Uh, Now, in some of the cases, and looking back on it, there was some of the stuff we uh, might not have should have been over there, but we were. And it's my attitude was to help take care of my guys, and I really felt like that was uh, important. And some people ask me, say, well, now I volunteered for the service and I specific volunteered even in writing for Vietnam.
You
And I
volunteered?
was I was disappointed that I didn't get Vietnam. My two others got to be on the ground in Vietnam. you know. But as it turned out, I probably was in the best place that I could be, and I was in a place that was extremely meaningful in terms of my service. And some people say, well, but you volunteered, but would you do it again?
That's my
And I
question. Yeah.
remind them, I'm from the volunteer state. I probably would. That's just uh, the way I felt about it. But I was from a family that I had uncles that served in World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. One of them served in all three wars.
Mm-hmm.
And I always had an appreciation for what they had done. And they kind of gave me uh, an attitude of how to approach my service. And so I did. I volunteered. I didn't get drafted. And yes, I would do it again.
What message would you have for America today and how we're treating our folks in the military? Is there something we could do better? Are we doing a pretty good job? As you see what's going on in the world today, a lot of hotspots in the world are we have carrier groups like in the Middle East as tensions are ramping up. What should we do in telling and letting our military know that we support them?
I think more and more we need to do what a few are doing already, and that's saying, "Hey, we appreciate it, we acknowledge it." That's what the number one thing every veteran wants. He wants people to know that he was there, that he contributed, and he he wants the acknowledgement of that, not necessarily anything more or whatever. But the one thing I always talk about my in my service, when I go to a parade and the flag goes by, a chill goes up my spine and tears come to my eyes
Mm-hmm.
when I watch that flag. When I remember to this day when I stood up and held my hand up and swore to defend that flag, and I realized, what it cost. I had classmates, I had people that I personally knew that died in the Vietnam War, and to me, just acknowledging their sacrifice and the sacrifice their families have made and stuff is important. But one of the things I always talk about, I'm so proud that I was a veteran in the United States of America. But one thing I do say about today, we're not so united as we should be. You
Yeah.
know, World War II, we were all pretty much united, but we're not united uh, very much today. It seems to me like it's almost half and half.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Half the people seem to be appreciative. One of the things I'm convinced it starts with leadership, though, when you get individuals that have a lot of notoriety or a lot of, uh, they have a bully pulpit and they say things and they cause people to do things that actually makes me sick. I'll be honest about it. There's some things I'm glad to see this improvement, but when I see that about half the people seem to blindly follow and whatever some individual tells them that they ought to do. And my grandfather always taught me use your head for more than a hat rack. Think for yourself. Some stuff makes no sense, and uh, that's what amazes me is that there seems to be such a large amount of people that actually in, endorse or embrace nonsense, and that's sad. That to me, I
Could you
pray and hope that it gets better.
could you give me some examples of either nonsense or things that you think maybe people should question? Are you saying, do I hear you right? And you're saying that sometimes soldiers shouldn't follow the orders they're given? You're not saying that, are you?
Do what now?
Okay. So you said that they're talking about nonsense. So the people in charge are should use some common sense. I want to drill down into what you just said. Give me some
Well,
examples and some things that have happened and how you feel about it today.
when I see the violent protests and
Mm-hmm.
stuff, you know, that and the destruction and that that really bothers me. And what bothers me is that some of them they what they're doing and what they're saying tend to contradict themselves. And uh, I feel like that when we can have dissent and we can have difference of opinion and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
but to destroy the place you live in is makes no sense. Spock and Star Trek would have said it's not logical. That's not logical. you know.
It's almost like we have a counterinsurgency going on in Minnesota, Minneapolis, so we can talk about things going on today. How do you feel when you see the flag being burned?
How do I feel when I what?
See the flag being burned, the American flag, the flag behind me, the stars and stripes, when you see it's on fire and people are having, this riot and they're burning the American flag. As a veteran who served in the Vietnam War, how does it make you feel?
I personally feel that it should be a crime that people should be actually punished for doing that. Now, it's one thing if they don't want to stand and salute it, if they don't want to support it, but to burn it, it's still a symbol, and symbols do matter. They matter a lot. One of the things that appears to be even today, you've got news of
Mhm.
people in foreign countries that have a lot of money that's actually funding a lot of the what you'd almost refer to it as being insurgency here in the
Right.
United States. That's what insurgency in any country in Thailand, and I gave a definition of
Mhm.
insurgency. It's where people refuse to recognize the current government and they do whatever they can do to tear that government down. That's insurgency. And yes, I think uh, you see people doing stuff like that. I personally feel like that it should be against the law. They should not be allowed to do that kind of thing, and they shouldn't be excused from doing it. Now, I realize everybody has an opinion and about anything, uh, you but I have a right to an opinion too, and that bothers me a lot of times, even whether you're talking about family or friends or acquaintances, people you work with.
Mhm.
They want to have their say, but they don't want you to have yours. Well, I don't mind letting the other side of an opposing opinion speak, and I'm willing to listen and tolerate their speech. But I'll be damned. I feel like that I deserve an opportunity to say what I want to say. It's fair both ways. And that's one of the things I feel like I watch some things and I use the expression a lot of times. Some of this stuff is upside down and backwards.
Mhm.
It just, again, it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't accomplish uh, anything. And I think what actually, in a lot of cases, the it's that's what they want is chaos. They don't want the it, to solve a particular problem. They
It
don't want to win their argument because if they win the argument, they'll change the argument. You know, I've
it almost seems like they want chaos in the streets, and it almost seems like there is I don't have anything in front of me to prove it, but almost like there was a funding mechanism from overseas trying to create an insurgency or counterinsurgency in America today.
Well, there's an awful lot of documentation and proof. In fact, the news item today was that there's a billionaire in China that's funding a lot of the violent protests. Well, we've known for years there's been other people other than in China, billionaires, rich people, but a lot of people don't realize that in some indirect ways, these people make money off of the problems that they create, and but that it is an effort to undermine the United States. There's no question about that in my mind. It's pretty obvious, but it's kind of interesting you're asking me about that. And the news item this evening was about the billionaire in China, and but that gets back to the thing that I said before. People need to pay attention and uh, think for themselves. Just because some individual tells you you need to go do this and you need to go do that, you need to stop and assess and think for yourself a little bit rather than just because the person that's doing this is not benefiting. The there's the people that's telling them to do it are the ones that's actually benefiting monetarily, politically, or whatever. But I still, one of the things having, I've actually served with people in different, who were from different countries.
Mm-hmm.
And I still maintain that we've still got the greatest country in the world. And, but the bottom line, it all boils back down to just life itself. You know, the most fundamental universal truth is this thing called life is a most wondrous thing. And if you don't get that, there's nothing anybody can do for you. You just can't. You're a lost person.
So when you talk about the people that should think about what other people are telling them to do, you're talking about the rioters and the people causing street chaos in, for example, Minnesota. That's who you're talking about, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And of course, a few years ago, we had some other areas. It wasn't just Minnesota, but it's all pretty much the same thing. And
If you don't mind me asking you, as we take a look at the world situation today, there are those people that say America is getting involved in too many overseas conflicts. We shouldn't be blowing up the drug boats. We shouldn't be in the Middle East and so on and so forth. As you look at the just grand scheme of what's going on in the world, let's take it instance by instance. The drug boats, where we send missiles to blow up the drug boats coming from Venezuela to America. Um, I have my opinion on that. What do you think we should be doing that? Blowing up those drug boats, bringing illegal drugs into America?
I think we should give them a chance to surrender. But if they refuse to, years ago, after I was in the service, I had an opportunity to work some with some multi uh, law enforcement agencies,
Mm-hmm.
and I had people asking me about drugs. I had professors even asking me my opinion of marijuana, and and a lot of people say, well, they know that's not a real big deal, but I pointed out a few instances, for example, where a couple was having a marijuana party and they left their little girl in the bathtub and upstairs, and the little girl drowned.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it, whether a person's inebriated on that or alcohol and they cause an accident, that is, uh, it doesn't matter exactly how or why, but I do think that the drugs is is a major problem. I've worked in several jobs that were where people use marijuana, in jobs where it was dangerous for them to use marijuana and stuff. And I personally believe that uh, it does contribute to, if nothing else, to a total lack of ambition, a willingness to work or perform or contribute properly. And so, no, I'm for stopping the drugs. I was just like the illegal uh, crossing the border. Yeah, some of them were, you could call them innocent people just looking for a better deal. But it concerns me when you look and see that 89% of the illegals are on welfare or on some government subsidy program. They're not contributing. I listened to one guy in New York City, for example.
Mhm.
This has been a year or two ago, and he was in his mid 20s, and he's saying, "I don't, uh, I don't have to work. I don't need to work. This city's got plenty of money. They need to take care of me." Well, I'm sorry. I don't, I don't share that uh, attitude. I was raised on a farm by my grandfather, and I was taught to work and to earn whatever I got. And there's a lot of respect, even self-respect that you get from working and achieving something instead of it's one thing just not to achieve anything, but to actually tear down stuff is really to me it's a sad situation, you
I,
know.
I totally agree with you that. So let's talk about sanctuary cities. Now, I wasn't going to get into this, but since we're getting into it, we may as well. Do you think ICE is being too difficult on illegal aliens? And do you think we need to back off the ICE protests and going out and sweeping up all these people that are in America illegally and deporting them? Do you think ICE is being too tough? I don't think so. What do you think?
Well, no, I support the immigration people. Now, tactically, maybe they should have politically tried to do it a little different, but I don't think it would have made any difference. They could have gone in a little softer. But again, you talk about some things about not making sense. For example, they don't want ICE to wear masks. They want
Mhm.
to be able to identify them and where they live and their families, but they wear masks. Well, what's with this? See, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
It's not logical. They can wear masks, and it's horrible if an illegal that's being arrested, even though he's been convicted of a serious crime, rape, murder, whatever,
Mhm.
and well, it's bad anytime anybody gets hurt, but if he's trying to hurt other people or if he has hurt other people, that's one thing. But you see people rioting and supporting the bad guys, but when somebody shoots, you forget that, or some you don't, but some people forget that some of the ICE agents have been shot. There's been policemen that's been ambushed and killed.
Yes.
Well, to to me, you can't. Uh, you're going to support the bad guy, but the guy that's trying to enforce the law, you're not going to support him. You're not going to. I was always amazed that some of the people wouldn't. When there were several people identified that had been killed by an illegal alien and stuff, and they were supporting the illegal alien, but nobody supported the young woman that was in the college, in Athens, Georgia.
Absolutely.
Nobody was protesting or even saying or expressing any kind of sympathy for that person. That again, that makes no sense. It's all one-sided, and I I look forward to the day when some of the violence and stuff tones down, and I think the more we get rid of some of those people. Now, I think the documentation is pretty obvious that the people that are being arrested and being deported, they're not only illegal, they are serious criminals. And to me,
Mm-hmm.
rape, murder, and torture of a child, stuff like that, to me, that uh, person, we don't want those. But to have people actually protest and want an individual like that that's already documented turn loose in their community, really, you know, what's with that,
Yeah,
you know.
I I totally agree with what you're saying. Let's talk about the overall. We're going to go into this, but we're going to go this a little farther. Let's talk about foreign policy. There are some people that believe America should kind of just keep into our own backyard, just take care of business here, and not be so engaged in military uh, presence so much in the world around us, and that we need to be more isolationist and not be uh, getting in everybody else's business. I don't agree with that. I think that America needs to have a presence in the world, especially in our hemisphere. But I haven't served in combat. You have in the Vietnam War. As you see America expand its military into to have a presence in other places of the world, are you okay with that? As a military veteran, do you like what's going on with foreign policy and how we're using the military to expand America's footprints and presence in the world?
I, I'm for a presence because if people are influencing our problems, they're causing problems for us. You know, when a person tells me that they want to hurt me, they want to shoot me, I believe them. I think it's foolish not to believe a person like that. Now, my personal attitude, having been in the Vietnam War
Mm-hmm.
and and watched what took place and how he did it, I personally think a limited presence on the ground. I really think the most successful way to approach this is more of what we recently did in Iran. We went in and bombed the hell out of those places that was where they promised death to America. They promised, when a person says they're going to do it, I believe them. And I think that kind of activity is really more what we should be doing, not necessarily sending troops on the ground in like we did in Vietnam, and risking. Of course, you're risking those
Yeah.
air crews and stuff, but we obviously have the ability to do some of that, and I have some history with Iran. Years ago, when Iran was our friend,
Mm-hmm.
I actually roomed with an Iranian sergeant during some uh, technical training courses and stuff.
Okay.
Well, when I was in Thailand, and I mentioned it in the book, there's a couple of pictures and stuff in there. I actually got to see the Shah of Iran and his wife, the Empress of Iran, along with the King and Queen of Thailand in person.
Okay.
And but at that time, Iran was really westernized before the Ayatollah and stuff took over and set them back about 1,000 years. But they were pretty well. Well, of course, he was exiled, and the Shah of Iran was, and everything went to hell in a handbasket for Iran. So I've always had some interest in Iran, and I watch them and listen to them. But I thought the Project Midnight Hammer was one of the best, most successful missions ever, and we pretty well slowed it down. If and I think that was probably the I kind of think we should be doing more of that kind of thing, limited things, whether we're using planes or missiles or whatever. But I don't think we should get ourselves bogged down with millions of guys. Now, when I was
Mm-hmm.
in the service, I was in the service 66, 67, 68, and 69. That was the 4 years that had the most military presence in Southeast Asia at uh, that was the height of the Vietnam War.
Mm-hmm.
And now I've had personal friends, I've had classmates, I've had people who that I knew. I've even gone to Arlington Cemetery and visited Chappie James's, my vice wing commander's uh, grave. I've been to the wall in in um, in um, in Washington D.C. twice, and I've got people that I know whose names are on that wall, and there's nothing you can say, no accolades, no awards or anything that ever can compensate those guys for their service, what they sacrificed. But yeah, I'm in agreement with you. I am for trying to head some of this stuff off, regardless of where it takes place. Our world is small enough now, it doesn't
Mm-hmm.
matter if it's in the Middle East, it doesn't matter if it's in China. It takes almost nothing uh, to be able to affect us over here. And but I really firmly believe that if we could do a little bit more of that, where
Mm-hmm.
we do a very decisive get in, get out, don't bother to put the guys on the ground.
Mm-hmm.
It's not necessary. We don't need to occupy. You know, they say, well, you need to occupy. No, we don't. We just need to hold people accountable. There should be consequences for decisions. Decisions have consequences, and somebody wants to hurt you, then you hurt them back. Now, Chappie James, he was a colonel. He wound up being a four-star general before it was all over. He said his father taught him about fighting when he was a young man. He said, once he said, don't ever start a fight, but once you see that a fight is going to happen anyway, he said, you throw the first blow and the second blow and the third blow. In other words, you don't give the other guy a chance. If if it's obvious he's going to hurt you, why wait till he hurts you? You know, and that was his attitude about fighting. And to me, I I would hope that we could become a little bit more what the politicians, the leaders could be a little less divided, could support each other, could wind up. To me, that's a pretty good compromise to say, okay, we're not going to just unlimited in an unlimited way put people on the ground. Let's but let's stop them from hurting us. If they're going to hurt us, we're going to hurt them first. We don't have to wait.
The one thing that I really admire, General Norman Schwarzkopf, he was a Vietnam veteran too, and an Operation Desert Storm and Desert Shield when we went into Iraq. He said, we're going to go in, we have a clear cut objective, we're going to go in, we're going to have a plan, we're going to overwhelm the enemy decisively, and we're going to win a decisive victory. We're going to win it, and we're going to get out. And because he didn't want to see the Middle East Operation Desert Storm, preceded by Desert Shield, to turn into an elongated 10-year debacle like Vietnam was. And I respect him for that. One of the things that really turned my mind as far as the U.S. should have a military presence, and again, I've never served, so I really appreciate your input on this. The one thing that really turned my opinion was 9/11. America was attacked on our soil. And that really proved to me that if we have an isolationist stand, you use the example of if somebody's going to start a fight, you need to, when you see that the fight is impending and coming, you take care of it. You start it and you end it decisively. And I think 9/11 proved to America, I hope, that if we just say, well, we're not going to get involved because it's not our monkey, not our zoo, not our monkeys, and we're not gonna get involved in their squabbles. Um, there are people in the Middle East that want world domination from Islam, and they want to take us out. They were viewed as the infidel, and we have to have a presence there, and we need to know what's going on. And I totally agree with you. I think Operation Midnight Hammer was a good thing, and I think Operation Midnight Hammer also proved that it's a small planet. You can start a bombing mission from the middle of the United States of America. You don't need a base there. I think Bagram Air Base. I think we should never have given that up. I think we should have had a presence in the Middle East. But Operation Midnight Hammer proved that you can fly a bomb mission from the middle of the United States, have a decisive and impactful surgical strike, and come back home and not lose a single airman. That was, I think, a huge demonstration of America's air power.
Oh, I've always been fascinated by the B-2. Uh, what I wouldn't give to get to fly in something like that would just unbelievable. I worked on B-52s, nuclear loaded B-52s when I was in the my last year in the service,
Mm-hmm.
and uh, to me, you know, you of course you do air refuelings, whether it's a B-2, whether it's a B-52 or whatever. Plus, we have missiles that we can send from all around the world. That a lot of people, and we've got all of the satellites uh, and stuff. The one thing that I always appreciated the fact that recently we have come up with the Space Force. If I was still in the Air Force, I would have volunteered to transfer to the Space Force. I think that was a good move. I think it made a lot of sense. But with all of the satellites and everything, the and the technology that we have, uh, we can pretty much hit anybody we want to through their bedroom window if we want to from here in the United States. We don't even have to send a plane over there to do it. And it's but no, I'm one of those guys that uh, I like to get along with people. I love getting out and about and meeting people, getting to know about them. And one thing I learned a long time ago, nobody is just nobody. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's done something, sometimes some things that's really, really meaningful. But I enjoy just being friendly with people. But now, if a person wants to get in a pissing contest, then I'm one of those guys that says, "Put your boots on, let's go at it."
Yeah.
I'm uh, kind of like Chappie James, his father taught him. Well, I heard him say it, and I even heard him again on Colonel Oles. His attitude was, about dying for your country. Everybody talked about dying, willing to die for their
Yeah.
country. And he says, and I know you've probably heard this, it's
Yes,
been
I have.
repeated many times that
I think Patton said
my
it.
job is not to die for my country. My job is to make sure the other guy dies for his country. And that's
Yeah.
now, I don't want to see nobody die. I'd love
Yeah.
we didn't have the conflict. But when I was in college, I had some professors and stuff that uh, thought you should use psychology, that you shouldn't fight, should never ever fight, and that you should negotiate, you should do this or do that. And I questioned a panel of 7 graduate students, psychology graduate students, and 6 of them were totally anti physical fighting ever under.
Hmm.
And I said, the problem is if you don't speak the other guy's language, and I don't mean English and
Hmm.
versus Iranian or anything. I'm
Sure.
talking about if you don't talk the same kind of logic, common sense kind of thing. If I said, when you try everything that you can do, well, then you do this. I say, but then once you do that and it don't work, what do you do? Well, do you do this? Well, finally, I got one of them to admit, I said, but if he's going to hurt you anyway, what are you going to do? You going to let him hurt you? Don't you think that it would be appropriate to hit him and prevent him from hurting you? And I had 1 out of 7 admitted that that would be the correct way to do it. That, but
Hmm.
if but we've got people though that's willing to hurt a lot of people for a lot of reasons, and there's people that's not even Muslim. There are people here in the United States that believe that some of us, I've heard them, seen them with my own eyes and
Yeah.
ears, say that me or people like me, we don't even deserve to breathe, much less be here.
Right.
And I'm thinking, really? You really think that you have the right to everything, but I have nothing. I don't even have the right to breathe. And
Hmm.
I, that kind of extremism makes no sense. And that's the reason I refer to that. To me, things in life really, after 79 years, I'm convinced are much more simple than people make them out. They make it too complicated. Life is pretty simple. It's a wondrous thing, this being alive and being able to witness and see things and experience things. But I feel like that a lot of people not only are wasting their time, they're wasting their life because they don't see that. They just do not see that at all. But I'm hopeful that things are going to get better here in the United States. I see improvement here and there in different uh, uh, aspects, but then, uh, but I'm afraid. That's I hope and pray that things will uh, become more sensible. And
So do I.
but I worry about it. I'm really it's a slippery slope. It really is. It's once you get a balance when things. I feel like we're almost perfectly balanced right now. It's that seesaw illustration that I was using earlier,
Hmm.
and it don't take much when things are that delicately balanced to it goes the other way. And but I do see quite a few people though that uh, more than I used to. But I keep hoping that a lot of people that's not saying anything really don't support a lot of the bad stuff. Even if they don't stand up against it, I hope that they don't try to justify it.
So you
So,
think that in America there's a lot of silent majority people that just don't want to get involved, that don't speak up, that do not support the anarchists and the rioters, for example, in Minnesota, the people burning the flag, that there's a lot of silent majority Americans that support conservative American values, support the military, support law enforcement, support obeying the laws and support enforcement of federal laws. I think you're right. I agree with you. I think there's a silent majority in America that really needs to speak up and say, quit burning the flag, quit burning down. In Minnesota, there's a police station that was burned to the ground. It's never been rebuilt yet in the so called Summer of Love. And that bothers me. It bothers me when people can get away with just flaunting the law and say, well, we're gonna obey that law, but we don't like that law, or we don't like the person in the White House today, so we're just not going to follow the laws. That bothers me. I'm sure it bothers you too.
well, my wife gave me one of the best universal truths. We've uh, been married for 27 years, and she said to me 1,000 times on things, she says, "It is what it is." Now, that's 5 words, and those 5 words shuts down any argument. And that's one another reason I think people came up with the phrase years ago, a picture's worth 1,000 words. When I hear people describe something one way and another person describes the exact same event another way, the words don't change what the situation is. It is what it is in the moment, and
Mm-hmm.
changing the words or changing the definition and stuff doesn't change that doesn't change this world at all.
Mm-hmm.
It is what it is, and I personally uh, would would like for some people to stand up a little more, whether it's the burning of the flag uh, or hurting policemen or whatever. I'm for law and order. Now, I realize that occasionally there's people that not only make mistakes, there's some bad policemen or whatever. Well, then let's get rid of them.
Mm-hmm.
Whether the ICE is doing right or wrong, but you can't tell me that that wearing a mask is okay for an illegal. But one of the things that he's talking about people standing up, the silent majority, or if you can get them to get out there and actually vote or whatever. One of the issues, of course, right now that's real big is the uh, voter ID. Well, you have to have an ID to go to the doctor's office, to go to the hospital, to even pick up certain medications. You have to have an ID to buy cigarettes, or you have to have an ID, and you have to show this ID when you're attempting to do any of that kind of thing. But to me, one of the most important things that you can do as a citizen is vote, but only a citizen should have the right to vote, and they should only have the right to vote one time. I watched a woman be interviewed in Chicago years ago that had filled out 17 absentee ballots with using different names and stuff and turned them in, and she acknowledged it on public TV that she did that because she wanted him to win. The one she had put, well,
She
that
voted 17 times.
she voted, and I have never heard of any any consequences for her doing that. Uh, it To me, if whatever you do, if it there should be consequences.
Mm-hmm.
I'm really convinced of that. I've had an unusual uh, life. I've actually served on an 18-month federal grand jury on one occasion. I've served on 4 different kinds of juries at different kinds of courts. And uh, to me, uh, I'm pretty much for law and order. I want
Me
it to
too.
be fair, and I want it but this stuff of this, you can actually kill somebody and be turned loose into the streets. That makes no sense. Or you kill somebody for eternity, but you only have to serve 2.5 years or something like that. That it's totally illogical.
Mm-hmm. Let's get back
But
to your book there for a minute before we run out of time. Now, the book, you can buy it on Amazon.com. It's Buck Sergeant Roberson, Thailand, 1967, 1968. I am very impressed by all of the detail he goes in on the books. He mentions plane numbers, air crews. They went in on this date, and also the book gives a lot of pictures and a lot of what it was like to actually live in Thailand and be in the Middle East during that time. So, and they've got maps. There's a picture here on page 91, uh, and it gives you kind of an idea about what it was like to live over there. Um, Toasting toast with a hair dryer. on page 91. And
Where he was making toast. Yeah, what we were doing was classified, uh, secret, and I said he was making top secret toast. that, but I found that it was kind of interesting. Uh, we learned to improvise in a lot of cases, you know. But yeah, it there was some funny stuff. There was some serious things that went on. But to me, and now if a person's interested in the book and they're just interested in the data and the details, of course, the paper copy is black and white, doesn't cost near as much. Obviously, the color copy is a little more expensive, but
it's
to
worth it.
me, uh, if you uh, but if you know of somebody, or if you're just curious, I've had a few young people that uh, the
There's even some maps in the books. I'm surprised at the detail that you've been able to print in this book.
yeah, if you could see it in enlarged, obviously I had to condense it down, and you have to use a magnifying glass or something to see some of it. And I put a little work into this. It took a while, but I had accumulated. I had newspaper clippings. I had all kinds. I had records, and of course some stuff that I made notes of as I went, but a lot of it I put in a scrapbook and kept it, and was able to refer to it. And for some reason, at the time I was doing all this, I never had any idea of writing a book. I thank God every day that I did take as many pictures as I did, or that I did document as much stuff as I did, because at the time, I would have never thought about actually writing a book. And but I put a little bit of effort in it. I tried to uh, make sure that as much as possible that it was accurate. It's not all from memory. That I actually have documentation and stuff
Mm-hmm.
to to back it up. And some people would just be interested in the culture. I mean, how many people's ever actually been to an elephant roundup? Uh, you know,
I
or
have it.
or how many people ever got to meet the king and queen of Thailand, or the Shah of Iran, of all places. When I think about Iran, and being able to, or now I've been to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base at their museum up there, and I've seen the the plane, Colonel Old's plane that he shot down his last two MiGs in. Well, one of the things I mentioned, I've actually set my butt in that plane.
Mm-hmm.
No, I didn't get to fly in it, but I got to work on the electronic warfare gear that was associated with it. And the one thing I do know, I know that Colonel Oles, and I know that a lot of the pilots, they appreciated what we did. And being an enlisted man, and in time of war, you get to come into your own. If you're not ever going to be appreciated, you'll be appreciated then. Even Colonel Oles will tell you that in his experience, that if you ever really wanted to get something done, when he couldn't get even top generals to take care of something, he'd seek out a sergeant, and that sergeant could get it done. Believe it or not, could cut him orders and do things that. So I was always, and I had a brother that was a private, went into the army as a private. He he got retired as a lieutenant colonel, and but I never necessarily wanted to be an officer, but I always wanted to be a top uh, sergeant, and I've seriously regretted getting out of the service. I The Air Force lets you earn eight stripes, Well, in 3.5 years, I earned four of them. And I've had several B-52 pilots that were captains and stuff said, well, man, you would have made chief master easy in 20 years. I mean, you already had half of it done in 3.5, and which that don't sound like a lot for to be a staff sergeant. Navy and the Army ranks a little bit faster, but for the Air Force, it was pretty good. But I always call those guys that had sergeants that had 8 stripes, I called them zebras, and I always wanted to be a zebra. they so it, it's been an interesting life, and and I appreciate you letting me share some of my opinions about things. I
Sure.
have learned um, uh, to uh, uh, have some kind of a sense of what's right and what's wrong, what works, what doesn't. And there's a few things I'd love to have a do-over, but I don't think I'm going to get a chance to do it over. But I I really think that most people learn a little bit as they go along because,
Mhm.
like I said, if it if you it's if you don't learn something when you're on this earth, then it's a waste of time. But most of all, it's a waste of a life. It really is. But one of the things, Dave, I want to thank you for what you're doing for your service in trying to promote and get uh, some notice and attention for the veterans. I really think what you do is extremely important because what you do touches a lot of people, lots of people, and a lot more than I can, just in my limited interaction with people. But what you do uh, is part of history. You're documenting a lot of stuff for a lot of people that even after me and you are gone, hopefully it will still exist for somebody else to review and see this. So I, I thank you. And one of the things, though, I'm assuming we're about done here.
Just about, yeah.
Okay, well, one of the things that I would like to say to all veterans, don't matter where you served, don't matter what branch you served in, don't matter in what capacity or in what location or what level of danger, if you did your job and you were honorably discharged, then I thank you and I salute you.
And we thank you for your service, James. And it's see, there's some nicknames here. I was breezing through it. Was it what do they call you, Jimmy or James or
James, I tell
James?
people, a lot of people over the years, I've been called James, Jim, Jimmy, Robbie, Sergeant Robbie. And I tell people, ask me when I introduce myself as James, they say, what do I call you, James or Jim? And I always look them straight in the eye and I say, it doesn't matter as long as you say it real nice. And some of them will
Okay.
back up when I say that. Uh,
This is a great read, folks. We'll put a picture on it. The green screen is not letting me show. It just kind of disappears in the white. But we'll put a picture of it. You can get it at Amazon.com. It's a great read if you want to find out what it was like in Thailand, 1967,
Let me
68.
hold mine up and just see what.
Please, please
Um,
do that. There you
uh,
go. Yeah, just hold it
uh,
right there for a little bit. Okay, folks, take it. That's the picture you're looking for. Amazon.com. Order you a copy. It's a great read from somebody who was there. You get a taste of the culture. For those that really want to know, I was really interested. One of the things that we're doing, in fact, one of the projects, one of the we got a lot of projects underway. But one of the things that we want to do that I don't know if we'll ever totally get it finished is we have an audio channel. And this is kind of a grandiose idea, but we want to, and it's on right now. And we started with Vietnam soldiers. Everyone killed in action for the United States of America needs to have their name read. And so we have these names on this continual audio loop, and it has the name rank where they were killed. And because we shouldn't forget these names. Uh, James did this in his book on air crews that flew and didn't come back. He mentions them in the book. We always need to remember those names. And so in our small way, we have this endless loop of names. And I think we're from A through C. We haven't got a whole lot of names up there yet from people who died in the Vietnam War. And there's this endless audio loop of these names we repeat over and over again. It never ends. And we just want to continue to add to that. We'll probably never get everybody's name up there, but I just, if somebody is lying and bleeding out in a rice paddy in Vietnam, hoping that somebody somewhere remembers him and his life and what he did, that's part of what we want to do with. It's called the Audio Wall of Honor, and that's one of the things we do with Operation Eagle's Wings under USA Heartbeat. So we'll be that's a project I've been working on for a couple of years now, about 4 years, and so we have a link on our website, and you could just listen to some of those names because we need to remember these names, and because they're important. They had a life. They would have had a longer life had they hadn't died in combat for the United States of America. And whether or not you agree whether or not we should have been in whatever war or police action in the Korean conflict or whatever you want to call it, it's a war, and good people died, and we need to always remember their names. And you can't just say, "Well, that was 50 years ago," and you know, sucks to be you. But we can't do that. I think the character of a nation is defined by how we remember those who gave their life to defend that nation. We need to be a nation of honor, and we need to honor those who have given the ultimate sacrifice for our nation. One of the things that I hate in seeing the burning flag is I have been at several uh, talked to several families, and they have a flag in a box, in a trifold box, on which their son or daughter, usually son, came home from the United States in a casket covered by that flag. So when you burn that flag, you dishonor and disrespect the many servicemen and women who came home in a casket under that flag. Don't be burning the flag around me, because I will never forget a mother of someone who was tortured to death in Iraq. She came to me and said, "Please tell me my son died for something important." This was my son. And it's we can't forget these folks. We simply cannot. The character of a nation is defined by how we remember those who gave his life to defend that country. Let us be a nation of honor. So get the book. Go ahead and hold it up again, James. The book.
Well, one thing
Go ahead.
I've got a picture of the Chattanooga National Cemetery, and it really was taken on November the 11th at 11 o'clock.
Okay.
But one of the things that people ask me, I've made arrangements ahead of time. I want to be buried in that cemetery, and it people say why, and I say because at least twice a year there's going to be somebody come by and stick a little flag on, and somebody's going to see my name on that uh, tombstone, on that headstone.
Right.
And it don't matter how many years from now or whatever, hopefully that cemetery, I've seen a lot of cemeteries that have been allowed to disintegrate and stuff, but hopefully our national cemeteries will last as long as our country lasts. And that all of those names, I call them gardens of stone. And I visited a lot of different graves and different cemeteries of people I personally know. And I really think that is also a way of remembering. If you've got your name on a stone in that place, uh, I'm assuming it's still the same way. The National Cemetery doesn't close. You can go there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and 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 to me, and it's a little bit more of a park atmosphere instead of, and it's got some history and stuff too. But
Mm-hmm.
I want my stone out there because I want somebody someday to walk by there and say, "Well, I wonder who he was. I wonder what he did," you know. And so one of my cousin who helped me a little, made some comments about my book. She has military people in her family, but she said she was so glad that I submitted this to the Library of Congress because it had
Mm-hmm.
history in it, that people's names was in it, that somewhere, sometime down the road, somebody might stumble across that in the Library of Congress and doing a search, and they'll know those names. And I think you've made it's really important because that is our immortality, is if we get to be remembered. And when we're not no longer remembered, then that's a sad commentary. But again, I thank you very very much, Dave, because it's been interesting. It's the first time I've ever done a TV interview, so thanks again. But mostly, I thank you for what you're doing for other people, other veterans, because there's a lot of them that have a story to tell, and there and there's nobody that doesn't have some kind of a story, and it's great that you're giving them a voice.
Well,
Thank
thank
you.
you. We need to teach our next generation the meaning of honor and sacrifice and duty and community and country. And they can definitely learn that from our veterans. So we need to teach that to the young people. James, thank you for being with us today. We'll have to do this again. And appreciate your service to your country. And hope it's a lot of years before we're visiting your grave site at the Memorial Cemetery here in Chattanooga.
Well, but I get to see you in person. I'm going to shake your hand, okay?
All righty. And we've got some copies of the book here. And go to Amazon.com, buy a copy of the book. It's a very interesting read. Uh, just do it. And every time you see a police officer, every time you see, there's a lot of veterans going around. Usually they have hats like like James Air Force hat on. Just go up and say thank you for your service, and especially the Vietnam vets, because when they came back, they didn't hear that. They're hearing it
No,
now, and we're making up for lost time. We're making up for the disrespect that we spit in their face back in the day, and I regret we as a nation did that. But we can make amends by saying, "Hey, really appreciate what you did. Thank you for your service, James. Thank you for being here with us today on the podcast."
okay. You have a good evening.
This is Street Level America, USA Heartbeat, Operation Eagle's Wings, honoring all who serve honorably and leaving no one behind. I'm Dave Adams. Have a good night.
Thank you.